Erdogan has failed to stop the uprising against his dictatorship in Turkey. Journalists and reporters from the mainstream media and new media are being arrested and deported. And we are getting reports that Pikachu has now been arrested after leading the uprising. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. The protests across the country in Turkey continue to escalate. The regime led by the dictator Erdogan have failed in the massive crackdown. Closer to 2,000 people have now been arrested and detained. Some of them have been released. The rest of them are going to be in huge trouble. But in this live stream, we're going to give you guys the latest information we have because some people obviously are trying to find a compromise in terms of what to do with Erdogan's regime. Some people are saying just keep going until he resigns. I mean, he's not going to resign, is he? And obviously, in regards to the wider situation in the region, Erdogan is taking advantage of this crisis. Because when a tyrant is in trouble, what they end up doing is they focus on foreign policy. Now, by the way, it doesn't just apply to tyrants, it also applies to technically democratic elected leaders as well. So in this country, in the UK, Starmer is doing the same thing. His domestic policies are falling apart, so he's trying to focus on foreign policy with the coalition of the willing to fight Russia. In Turkey, Erdogan is actually focusing on getting closer to the Israeli border. Yes, we are now going to have NATO right by the Syrian border because Erdogan is doing an expansion for his so-called empire. Now, let's talk about what's been going on in Turkey over the last few days. The protests continue as usual. A huge number of people have been arrested. The issue that we now have is that reporting is being difficult because both the new media and mainstream media reporters and journalists are being arrested, and the ones who are foreign, they are getting deported. And by the way, that also applies to some of the media channels that we don't like, but they are still journalists and they're still doing their job, even if they are biased, even if they are messed up. I don't care. If you're a reporter, you should be able to do your job, whether you are Fox News, CNN, BBC, Sky, even Al Jazeera. You need to have the right to be able to report. Even if your reporting is fake, I don't care. It's your job as a normal human being to be able to be there to report. That's not happening. And this is why we have a situation where everybody's now relying on those with mobile phones, essentially citizen journalists, to do the reporting on the ground, which makes it a little bit hard in terms of verifying the stories, in terms of actually getting everything up to date. It's the same problem we have with Iran, because the Islamic Republic in Iran, they always tend to shut down the internet. They don't really allow any mainstream media to be there. New media completely banned anyway. But over the last couple of days, we've had some hope because Pikachu joined the uprising, and Pikachu has been leading this quite successfully until now, because we're getting reports that Pikachu has been arrested. What a shame. Oh, poor Pikachu. As we said, we're getting reports that he's unfortunately been arrested. We're going to find out what's happened. If we're going to get any statements from the rest of the universe. Now, on a serious note, the problem with the ban on some of the foreign press is actually even reached the BBC, which is quite interesting because Erdogan it's been quite friendly with the BBC, but the BBC correspondent Mark Lowen has now been deported from Istanbul, which is so bad. I know it's not funny, but it's hilarious that this is in 2025. This is happening. The director of the Human Rights Watch, Emma Sinclair Webb, told the BBC that she was shocked at the deportation of an international journalist. But again, he's not the only one. Many others have also been arrested and deported. But Emma said, this sends a message to the rest of the international media that we will not tolerate you covering stories that we don't want the world to see. This is the thing. When people go around celebrating one side, for example, if it was just the BBC, some people would say, it's the BBC, they deserve it, get them out. The problem is they come for you next, and they have come for everybody else. New media, the rest of the international media, from the BBC lot to the Al Jazeera guys and all the others, everything will be shut down. Because if you go around saying, well, firstly, the BBC has some sort of tendency to get deported from everywhere anyway. For being the BBC, but it's not just about the BBC. Why can't we deport the BBC in the UK? And that's what I want to know. Anyway, going to Mark Lowen, he released a statement saying that to be detained and deported from the country where I previously lived for 5 years and for which I have such affection has been extremely distressing. Press freedom and impartial reporting are fundamental to any democracy. The idiots, Mark Lowen and the others, these are what we call internationalists, right? Internationalists, elitists. So these are the liberal globalists who go around saying, look at Turkey. I love Turkey. This is such a good place. Everything is perfect. It's better than the UK. I'm going to live here for 5 years. This is what internationalism looks like. Oh no, I got arrested. This is what happens when you do that, Mark. Because you're going around pretending that the rest of the world is going to treat you the same way you're going to be treated, for example, in Britain. No, that's not the case. People like Mark Lowen are the same people who've been advocating for saying, let's just bring everybody from around the world to the UK. Open the doors. Because I was in Turkey. Everything was perfect. The system is great. Look at it. Oh, really? Now you're tasting your own medicine. Anyway, that aside, the protests obviously continue. And again, we do have another clip from Pikachu. Well, obviously, we have to pay tribute to Pikachu because he's been brave enough on his little feet to go do. But the arrests are going up, and the blockage on transport and media and the internet is not really helping for us to know exactly what's going on deeper inside Turkey. But we can show you the next clip. Oh, well, good old Pikachu. Now, this is what we're dealing with. Ladies and gentlemen, what the actual media should be showing right now, and what the international community should be showing right now, is this. Innocent people who are protesting, who are using their democratic exercise to actually protest, they are being treated like this. This is not supposed to be a war zone. This is not supposed to be Gaza. This is supposed to be Turkey. This is supposed to be a country that is in NATO. This is supposed to be a country that wants to join the European Union. I just don't understand why the United Nations, the rest of the international human rights groups, are not having any urgency to speak out about what's actually going on to normal people in Turkey. How much longer can people take this? Because yes, Erdogan could say, well, I feel confident because not only I'm still in NATO, for obvious reasons. Secondly, my influence on the international stage has been proven. So he's talking about Syria. He's talking about the fact that he managed to do a coup, essentially a paramilitary coup with the help of his apprentice, Al-Julani, and they overthrew Assad. Again, not that Assad was a good guy, but Al-Julani is now the dictator of Syria. Not only that, Erdogan is expanding. His Ottoman Empire 2.0 is now in full operation. He thinks he's going to succeed. What he's now doing is that he's using Al-Julani's help to get closer to the Israeli border. A NATO member is going to be right at the Israeli border. So, the latest update is that Syria and Turkey are now doing a deal transferring control of key territories near Palmyra, which was a stronghold for the Iranian militia at the time, in exchange for Turkish military and economic support for al-Julani in Syria. Turkey is planning to establish an airbase in central Syria to host the F-16 fighter jets. Obviously, if the US greenlights Turkey's re-entry into the F-35 program, the threat obviously intensifies. This would put a heavily armed NATO member force, as in Turkey, equipped, by the way, with advanced technology, right deep inside Syria, within striking distance of Israel. Right there. They could attack Israel whenever they want. Now, this is obviously becoming a greater threat to Israel than even Iran, because the Iranian regime are further away. And if they don't have Syria to use to attack Israel. And one other thing to mention is that the Americans, as the leaders of NATO, they have to keep all sides happy, because they know they're going to have to keep Turkey tame so that they don't kick off. For example, if Erdogan believes that he is in trouble, as I said earlier, what leaders tend to do is they create a foreign crisis. So whether it's about creating a war, conflict, whatever, or just do something on the international stage, which means not to do Project Fear, but you might even have an exaggerated scenario, which is targeting Cyprus, for example. If he becomes desperate, he's going to do crazy things. When he wasn't desperate a few months ago, he brought down Assad. When he's going to get desperate, he's going to go crazy. He's going to find an excuse to target the Jews. Not proactively, more like a reactionary, like, oh, oopsie, this happened. Because they're going to go around saying, well, we have to go through Syria to get to Lebanon. We want to help our friends in Syria, al-Julani, to defeat Hezbollah. But meanwhile, they also have to fight the IDF. If that doesn't work for Erdogan, because he is not going to be able to bring back the support for himself inside Turkey, he's going to have to find other ways. Even if that means going for Cyprus, for example. He's not going to care. This is not a normal democratic leader who's going to say, well, I've got 4 years left, I've got 2 years left, I've got 6 months left, I'm going to do something for my legacy, get a library built and then go away. Now, these people don't want to lose power. If he's losing support in Turkey, he's going to find a way to distract everybody by creating a wider conflict. He's more dangerous right now than the other enemies right in the region, because he's powerful, because of his military, and because he's part of NATO. Doesn't necessarily mean that if somehow something happens between Turkey and Israel, which is still unlikely, because Turkey will not be able to get the support of the US, even though they're in NATO, there are red lines. And obviously they don't want the Americans to punish them. Even that includes removing the NATO membership, which again is also unlikely at this point. Turkey, I believe they're not stupid enough to actually attack Israel, but to show intimidation, to show strength, they're going to be right at the border. That's the idea now. It's to basically show strength in a sense that my empire could be out there. Look what I did in Syria against Assad. If I want to, I could, but I won't. How can he actually negotiate his membership of the European Union? God knows. Let's get some reaction from you guys. I got Justine saying, free Tommy and Pikachu. Yes. I never thought a year ago that I would use these words in one sentence. Free Tommy and Pikachu. Sam says, Islam out, Pikachu in. I'm fine with that, absolutely. AFC Manu says, Erdogan wanted to be the very best, like no one ever was. And to catch him, gotta catch them all. Oh, so many Pokemon jokes. That's funny, isn't it? Now, Firecracker says, I'm sorry, I can't help laughing. How could anyone arrest Pikachu with a straight face? His little legs, bless him. I hope he's okay. For the record, I don't think the actual person had little legs, but the thing did have little legs. Pikachu. Peter says the reason it's not reported here is because Turkey is an Islamist state and becoming more so. Yeah. Also, let's not forget that this is going to be causing even more migration towards the West. But on the one hand, we are supporting a tyrant like Erdogan. On the other hand, we have to accommodate the people who leave Turkey as refugees. It's a lose-lose situation. This makes no sense. Just support the normal good people of Turkey so that you don't have to deal with a tyrant and they will stay in Turkey and build Turkey. Here we go. What's this one saying? You mean Erdogan could behave the way Bibi did when destroyed all of Gaza? That kind of distraction? No. Okay, number one, Gaza is not fully destroyed. You can see the closer to the sea, the beach. Secondly, Erdogan would do a conflict just like any other tyrant when there is a crisis internally. Israel, Bibi didn't do anything. Israel and the IDF, the Israeli people and the IDF, defended themselves after their country was invaded by IRGC-backed Hamas. That's different. Nobody invaded Turkey. So it's insane. People think that a country defending itself is the same as a random tyrant going crazy against his own people. Alex says, I agree with everything you say about Islam, but I have to ask, what is your take on globalism? I'm guessing you're new to the channel, right? And who do you think pushes it? Because globalists are ruining the West just as much as Islam. Well, firstly, let's not forget that Islam was the original version of globalism and in a more organized way, because they were the first group that advocated for one world government under the flag of Islam. Since then, obviously, we had a situation where, well, globalism is a stupid idea. Political globalism is dangerous because it's a push acceleration for something that is not natural. Globalization, as a natural course of evolution and humanity, that's natural. The world is becoming smaller because you can easily travel to the rest of the world. The internet gives you access to information from all around the world. That's globalization. And you can buy products that were built somewhere else and designed somewhere else. That's fine. You can get the food from other places quickly. Trade. That's one thing. That's globalization. Globalism is a choice. Political globalism has been dangerous, and the reason for this is because a lot of people already created it. For example, the empires, the latter empires, including the British Empire, by definition, they were globalists. They were not necessarily nationalists. They were globalists. And since the Second World War, and just before that, there was a massive push by a couple of different groups. Number one, those who had money and influence, and they were dealing with on an international level. So whether you want to talk about the Rothschilds or all the other groups, families, and they wanted to make sure that they have a reach when it comes to business and their corporations. But then you had a different group, the so-called intellectuals. These were the thinkers. These were the idiots who essentially rebranded what Karl Marx was talking about. Because Karl Marx wasn't just about the means of production. It was also about internationalism. It was also about saying that a government of one country shouldn't really be governing one country. Everything should be internationalists. That's why the whole socialism was an international socialist movement. That's why when Hitler came in Germany, it was like, okay, I like the socialist parts, but I don't like internationalism. So I'm going to add nationalism to it and do just for Germany, which was also a stupid idea. But there were people, including Keynes, who self-identified as an economist. He was a political person, not an economist. And these people who pushed for the creation of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, and everything else that's happened since were the reason for this. There were a number of people who did it ideologically because they believed it was the worldview that they had. But on the other hand, you also had those who had their own self-interest. Certain families, businesses, and they were from all around the world. Some people say, oh, they were all just American. Not necessarily. Not all of them are American. Some of them are European. but it was in their interest to have a more of a global reach. So they wanted governments to become less about national interests and more about the international interests. But since then, it's just been a bit of a snowball. Since then, nobody can actually challenge it. And it becomes extremely dangerous. Because they say if you criticize political globalism, then that means that you are against the norm, that you are the enemy, and you want to take the world back to 1914. 1914. They literally say that, by the way. The reason they are using one excuse to shut down the debate. They say, if we don't do this, the international solidarity nonsense, then what you're going to have is you're going to have different countries next to each other, like the UK and France and Germany, right? Or Greece and Turkey, becoming powerful and becoming rivals, and then tensions, and then they're going to fight each other, like 1914. Their problem is, they say the only way to prevent that is to go with our world order, which is basically forcing these countries to technically be frenemies, not even friendly. So we haven't had war between Western European countries since the New World Order, which is good, right? But they say that's peace. But that comes at a cost. Neglect, complacency, corruption. The European Union claims that the existence of the EU is the reason that we haven't had war in Europe. No, it was the fact that you started actually trading with each other and each country became a democracy. That's why. They are lying to people saying, no, only because of the European Union, only because of the United Nations, we haven't had 1914. The problem with the new system, the globalized system, is that they don't want one country, one powerful country to go down on its own because they might find the next Hitler, right? Because that country would say, oh, we are left behind. Germany felt that way. So they say if one country goes down, the rest have to go down with them. That's the model that we have, economically and politically. So when there is a financial crash in America, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, they will all go down at the same time. There will be relatively slight differences in terms of the GDP and obviously the other effects, including inflation. But the overall, we're all in it together. We all go down, we all come up. But are we? No. There's a safety net to prevent one country from going down because it might go crazy. But that actually affects actual growth. We are not growing in Europe. America is still growing because America always takes care of America. Now, there have been people in the deep state in America who push for globalism, but not for America. Because America is the world leader. It doesn't actually affect America. But the rest of the world is a bit of a mess. I'm not advocating for 1914. We are advocating for a fresh start. You can still trade with each other, as long as it's fair and a level playing field. Be free countries, be democratic, be friendly with each other, but compete. Competition is healthy. You must be able to compete. Rob Hoy says, another reason we didn't have war in Europe is the passivity of the EU allowing an influx of Islamists to enter. No, because that was mostly towards the end of the 20th century. We haven't had wars since 1940s between major European countries. Again, we're talking about Austria, Netherlands, Germany, France, the UK. It was way before the Islamic migration. It was primarily because of the globalized system that they created. Stu says, globalism sounds nicer than world domination. The thing about globalism is that on the surface, it would seem like no world domination by one person or one group. Like nobody's in charge. And when nobody's in charge, as in one father figure, one dictator, yes, true, nobody's in charge. But the vested interests are in charge behind the scenes. The lobbies have to lobby, the banks and everybody else. And they are also damaging the concept of capitalism, because they are doing this in the name of capitalism. There's nothing capitalist about this. It's corporatist. It's globalist corporatism. It's not free market capitalism, because they do not believe in free market. They do not want small and medium-sized businesses to compete with major corporations. Corporations do not represent free market capitalism. There's nothing free about it. And Vinny says about 10 million NGOs currently operate worldwide. Exactly. And they're all interconnected. And this is, again, Vinny's comment helped because it's not one person or one group in charge, but it's just a vested interest, which basically they all think the same anyway. But then the problem with this is that there are also, because at the end of the day, you are dealing with different groups, different cultures, different personalities. Even if you think some sort of American WEF lover banker is there wearing a suit, and then there's one from France and one from Germany, one from Japan, you're like, well, yeah, they're all the same, right? They're all globalists, they're all in the same club, but they also are divided because at the end of the day, humans from each different tribes have different mentalities. So, for example, this Japanese globalist will have a different worldview of globalism compared to the French globalist. Now, if the time comes and they have to decide who's going to be in charge, well, they're going to clash. They're not necessarily going to have a war like 1914, but they'll do it behind closed doors. More like white-collar war, let's just say. One of them might end up on Epstein Island and somehow disappears, right? They've essentially legalized the mafia. That's all they've done. And we are not able to hold them to account. Let's not forget that the Turks continue to defend themselves. The Turks are brave. They are fighting back. But Erdogan started this. Erdogan brutally attacked, beat up, and arrested people who were peacefully protesting. Now that the Turks are fighting back, it's because they have to defend themselves. You saw the first few days. Marchers. People were just marching on the streets. When the police attacked them, the Turks had to defend themselves. They had to hit back because they knew if they get arrested, they will get into bigger trouble than it is. I am Turkish and Persian, and I'm telling you, Erdogan did more for Turkey than anyone else besides Ataturk. Sorry, it's Friday night. We had to have comedy. Also, let's continue with the propaganda. So, Erdogan has done more than Ataturk. Well, besides Ataturk. Also, Imamoglu is corrupt as it gets. Please do FPK is helping. I needed that. That was kind of funny. Yeah. Erdogan, look at this. We got someone saying, I am Turkish too. Erdogan did nothing for Turkey. I mean, he just made Turkey a little bit more corrupt, but yeah, otherwise, what was that person saying? I mean, yeah, when you mix Persian and Turkish, that's what you get, right? What is this? Martin says the Turkish president, Erdogan, blames the opposition parties for provoking a movement of violence. What violence? The Turks were peacefully marching. As the protests in the country will continue, Imamoglu says allegations against him are politically motivated. Yeah, obviously, are we just getting some sort of summary of the actual news from Martin? Yeah, obviously, it's all trumped up. Like, they just decided to go out. It wasn't just about Imamoglu because Ekrem himself is just one person. They also went around and arrested everybody else. You are claiming that Ekrem Imamoglu, as the opposition leader, he's corrupt. Okay, arrest him. Why do you have to go and arrest everybody else and beat up everybody else? That makes no sense. Where's that guy gone? Oh yeah, Ranko says he's a fan of the Ayatollah too, probably. Yeah, actually, what was the name of the person? Program in C. Can you answer this question? What is your opinion on the Islamic Republic of Iran? If you are half Turk and half Persian, I would love to know your opinion on Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. What a crazy time to be alive, guys. Groucho Marx, it's not the actual Groucho, but yeah, says that I went to a Turkish barber's and I asked for a back. Is there going to be like a punchline? Back, crack, and sack, and they were very rude. Oh dear. Where is the guy? Has he replied or has he given up? Please reply. I just really want to know. I want to know. Victoria says Turkey allowed ISIS supporters through their territory into Syria, but Turkey and Erdogan literally trained and backed al-Jilani, and now he's getting what he wanted. Why do you think Erdogan wanted al-Jilani to overthrow Assad? Because he wanted the favor. He wanted then the new Syrian regime to go and allow the Turks to go in. That's basically the whole point. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We're going to come back shortly and talk about what's going on with the other beardy weirdies in Lebanon. Yes, Hezbollah, and all the nonsense that's happening in Yemen as well. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.